so good morning, welcome. I'm happy to see you all here early on Monday morning. I'm going to talk about universal design for learning in statistics specifically. And just for those that don't know what universal design for learning is exactly, here is a definition. And I don't expect you to read all of the things that are on that slide. This is like a prime example of poor slide design. The basic idea is to have multiple means of engagement. So for students to engage with the course material and to relate it to their personal lives and to engage with it at the difficulty that they would like to engage with it. Multiple means of representation. So in terms of the course material, having it be available in multiple formats. So again, the students can consume it in ways that work for them. And finally, multiple means of action and expression. When you're assessing your students, making sure that they can demonstrate their learning to you in the ways that work best for them. So if you've never heard of universal design for learning, which was me 3 years ago, I first heard about it in 2019. This is a rough definition. And I'm going to go through some examples of how I've employed these principles in my statistics courses. And as Dan said on Saturday, it's very important to consider your own course context. So something that works for one person and one set of students might not work for another. So I'm just going to briefly describe the two courses that I'm talking about, and then I'll go through some examples of how I use these principles. So one of the classes is called Stat 230. It is a large 500 plus second-year introductory probability course, and it's taken by all math majors, whether or not they intend to go into statistics. So some people, computer scientists and pure mathematicians and applied mathematicians and actuarial scientists, all of the people are taking this exact same course. And the term that I'm speaking about, it was delivered online, and in Waterloo, we were not allowed to do synchronous online. So we had to do asynchronous when we were teaching online. So that was the restriction that I was working with. And the second course that I'm going to be speaking about, maybe I call it more like a medium-sized course, was Stat 334. So medium 50 to 60, just depending on the term. And it is a third-year course in probability models, so Markov chains, +1 process, grounding emotion for math business students. So they're, again, maybe not super into the theoretical side of probability. They're looking more for that practical application. And I've taught it a whole bunch of times sort of normally, quote, quote. But I also then taught it online during the pandemic with videos. And then when I moved back in person this term for this course, I taught it flipped. So I used the videos that I had created, and then we only met once a week in class to do active learning activities. And so those are the two courses that I'm talking about. For all of my next following 3 slides worth of examples, if it says a course, I was talking about that course, and if it doesn't say a course, then I used it in both of them. Does that make sense? Awesome. Let's keep going. So in terms of that first sort of principle of UDL, to have multiple means of engagement and having the students see themselves in the material and be able to connect with it, I did a pre-course survey in Stat 334, so that was really neat. So before the term began, I sent out an email to everyone with just a link to a Microsoft Forms, I think, asking basic info like, what's your preferred name, what are your pronouns, when did you last take the prerequisite for this course, because for some people it had been quite a while, and also things like what were the things that helped you learn in your online and your in-person courses, and is there anything you need to know that can help you lower barriers for your own learning. I got a few suggestions from that in terms of things like captions on the videos, and they really liked various other aspects of online learning, and then I was able to kind of take that and roll it into sort of my course design. So that was a useful thing to do. I didn't do that in 230 just because it was so large that I didn't think I could meaningfully engage with the data that I would get from it. But I kind of regret it. I think you could do this fairly easily in a large class as well. Second thing that I used in terms of engagement was the way that students would obtain participation grade in Stat 230, because again, we were not allowed to do any synchronous activities. It's very difficult to measure how engaged a student is in the course. And so we used the Piazza discussion platform and had a few different ways that students could demonstrate their engagement on this platform. So there was the basics, like you can ask a question, great, that's worth points. You can answer someone else's question, that's awesome. But I didn't want people just asking stupid questions just for the sake of getting a point, or chiming in on every single post and I agree with that answer, I agree with that answer, because you get spurious questions if you put like a weight of marks on them. So as well, I had a different opportunity to engage with these thought question polls. So each week I had about 3 questions. I would post them on the discussion board, and they were polls where you can't see the distribution of the results until you answer. So a student would have to commit to an answer, click on it, and then they could see how other students voted. And then they would see, okay, yes, I agree with the majority, which was almost always the right answer. Once I think it wasn't, and then I would clarify in the comments, the majority answer is not actually correct here. But most of the time, the majority was correct. And then if they had any questions about it, they could continue this discussion in the comments. And those comments counted towards their participation. As well, I had some open-ended thought question polls. So like, how does probability apply to your area of expertise? Or like, what are your plans for reading week? Or like, what's the most interesting thing you learned in the course so far? Or something like that. So there's open-ended questions. And again, any response to that would count towards their engagement score. So that, I think, worked really well. My favorite thing about that course that term was actually how supportive the community was, because people were answering each other's questions, sometimes in seconds. Like, I almost never had to answer content-related questions because students would answer each other so quickly, because when you have that volume of students, there's always somebody awake. So it was pretty neat. So again, that providing those different ways to engage with the course serves students at all different levels. Right? If someone doesn't have any questions, telling them you have to ask questions on the discussion board to get a participation is a waste of their time. But instead, they could engage by answering other people or just responding to these thought question polls. And they didn't even have to get it right to get the points. Last for this section, in 334, I have a bunch of activities that happen in the in-class meetings. So I start each one with a Kahoot quiz, 5 questions on the previous week's videos. And then we do an activity in groups on that material as well. So that's been how I've sort of done this, this flipping of the course. And I actually have a video of that if you want to learn more about how I flipped the course. But the concern that I had, of course, was that kind of situation where you're in a class, it's really loud, there's lots of groups talking, you know, it's a bit chaotic. That doesn't work well for plenty of students who have maybe sensory issues or someone who's sick one day. There's just lots of reasons why that type of activity, even though it's very beneficial, might not work for a student in a particular week. So I also have an out-of-class option. So if you don't come to class that day, I send you an email afterwards and say, hey, here's the activity, and email it to them, get it back to me within 24 hours, and you'll get full points. It's harder to do the activities on your own. Like, it's more fun to do it with other people in this place, but you can still demonstrate your knowledge, and you're not at risk of losing points just by not being there one particular day. As well, there are 12 of them, and they're worth 1% each for a total of 10, which means your lowest will get dropped. So if you're just not feeling it one week, you don't have to come, and you won't lose any points. So those are sort of 3 ways that I incorporate like considering different needs of students into how they engage with the course material. Are there any questions about any of these? Okay, next. In terms of multiple means of representation, again, this is how the course material is delivered to the students. I had in both courses lecture videos. In the first case, in Stat 230, they were created by someone else. I think they're pretty high quality, but they were actually created through the Mobius platform. So if you've heard, I think there's a talk later today about Mobius. They were, again, provided through that platform, but it was really important to me that they were also available outside of that platform. So we also exported the videos, added captions, and the ability for students to control the speed, because a lot of people, especially people with neurodivergence, like to listen to things faster than people are actually talking to be able to pay attention. I can't pay attention to somebody speaking. I wish the real world had a times 2 buttons, but that as well. And just making sure that the notes of like what is appearing in the video was printable or downloadable as well. So that we made those like alternate versions of the Mobius created lecture videos available. And in Stat 334, I created all the videos myself, and so I made sure that I worked this into the workflow of making sure that we're captioned, and then uploading them in a format that could be easily downloaded, change the speed, as well as uploading the notes separately in both PDF and OneNote format, so that students can again engage with it how they like best. Also in both courses, we had course notes with additional examples and explanations. So if the video was enough for you, fabulous. But if you wanted maybe another example or a different explanation, you could go to those course notes. So in the courses that I teach, we don't follow the course notes very closely. That's sort of like, I've never followed a set of course notes very, very closely. There's definitely advantages in doing that. But for me, the course notes was kind of a supplemental resource. And so that's how we recommended the students use it. Again, like if you're understanding everything from the videos and you're able to do the practice questions, great. But if you're not, here's another alternative resource that you can engage with to see a different representation of the material, and again, maybe get some more practice. In Stat 334, again, because this was flipped, they're watching these videos and they only see me once a week. And so I wanted to make sure that before they came to class, they had some diagnostic of how well they had understood the material in the video. So along with each set of videos, I would provide some knowledge check questions, just a few, maybe like 3, 4, 5, so that if they could do these, that meant they had understood the material in the videos. And that sort of helped prepare them for the quiz at the start of class. So that was fun to write those, just to, after making the videos, be like, what do I really want people to know from this video? Can I like summarize that in a question or two? And those had numerical answers so that they could check they were right, but no solutions were ever provided. Because the point is, if you provide solutions, they're just going to read them, which is not learning. So they're just things they have to check on your own. And I did get a lot of discussion on Piazza, like, hey, let's check question 3, like, how do you get this, whatever. So they're definitely trying them outside of class to make sure that they can understand those videos. And those, again, are just posted on the Learn page, our LMS, relatively easy to find. And then finally, this is just kind of a fun thing, a different way to engage with the course material. I mentioned in Stat 230 we were not allowed to have any synchronous component. That's not entirely true. We just weren't allowed to have any mandatory synchronous component. So I just picked a random time that worked for me, and I had weekly live streams on Twitch for Stat 230. And in those, I talked about the gaming and machine learning applications of the course material, which is why I chose Twitch for my platform, because that's where all the gamers are going to be. So occasionally I got like people crashing the stream, but I got someone coming in and saying, this stream is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. I was like, no, it's not. So it was pretty funny. So I didn't have super good attendance at these, but that's okay. It was just like, again, a way for students who had an interest in those areas to engage with the course and sort of again, see a different representation of it in this. So any questions about these sort of 4 different ways that I incorporated content delivery, if you like, of the course material?
Knowledge checks. How many questions?
Great question. So the knowledge check questions are between 3 and 5 or so, depending on the material. And there were different formats as well. Some of them were like true or false. Some of them were like, here's a list of things, which of them are random variables. So the format of them varied. And actually, some of them were questions from past tests in the same course that I just was like, wow, I made this really great question. I'm certainly not going to put it on a test because I know it's out there in the world. So I'll check it on the knowledge check question. Thank you for asking. Questions? Okay, lastly, in terms of multiple means of action and expression, again, that is how students can then demonstrate their knowledge to me in terms of how they're assessed. First is I had in both courses a variety of different types of assignments. So in Stat 230, we had what we like to call computer-assisted assignments. So this is where maybe, question 1, part A would be to calculate some theoretical probability. We actually used pretty relevant examples, things like the GameStop stock fiasco was happening at that time, so we made a question about that. We made a question about the efficacy or like specificity and sensitivity of COVID tests, and a few other like somewhat relevant examples. So they had to do some theoretical calculations, but then also using their student ID number as a seed, simulate, and then get the sort of their simulated results using R. So that's kind of neat to just put those 2 things together and make sure that they could do it in both ways. We also had collaborative assignments, which was kind of fun. It was another coworker's idea, and I loved it, so I stole it. So students in small groups of 3 or 4 had to each write a question on a set of the course material, and then answer each other's questions, and then comment on them. So it was pretty neat. And then the TAs would identify like the all-star questions, and then we published like a list of the best questions, which were then additional practice problems for the students. So that was really cool in Stat 230. So again, it's providing different ways for people to demonstrate their knowledge, whether they're strong at writing questions or coding or doing theoretical calculations. In Stat 334, a huge learning outcome for me, the most important thing I think that I want my students to take away from it is knowing when to apply which probability model to a situation, right? Like being able to think about a situation and say, okay, this would be appropriate for a binary, or this would be appropriate for a Markov chain. And so I did something on my written assignments called the probability models inventory. So each one I would have sort of a list of concepts in the course and ask the students to write down an example that they're going to think of as their go-to example for this. So like, this is my go-to example of a Poisson process. This is my go-to example of an exponential distribution, something like that. And that was, this is the first time I tried something like this, and they found it super, super helpful. So I said they could use an example that I talked about in class, or in the videos, or from another student's project, or they could make up their own. And I suggested, like, you're going to remember it more if you make up your own. My personal favorite were the geometric distributions trials until you get success. They said, what if you ask somebody on a date every day until they say yes? Then the number of times they say no is a geometric distribution. So, I mean, again, obviously the probability wouldn't be constant in real life, and maybe you should give up eventually. But that was their go-to example, so I just loved it. And again, people came up with super creative things that I never would have thought of, and it's nice to tie it to their own, like, again, making it something that they'll remember. I also had reflective questions on the assignments, so thinking about their goals and how they're progressing in the course. Their final assignment is due tomorrow at midnight, so I will look and see about their final reflection questions, and hopefully they learn some cool finally, this is a big one for me, actually. I liked, in the pandemic in general, again, we couldn't have any kind of online proctoring. Welcome to Faculty of Math banned all online proctoring software. Very, very proud of that. So we were obviously allowing them to use various resources on tests. And I found that the marks didn't go up that much in my courses. So they had more time than they normally would, and they had access to more resources than they normally would. And they still did reasonably, again, a little bit higher, but not alarmingly so. And so I wanted to keep that, actually, when I moved back in person. I wanted to make sure that if somebody didn't answer something on a test, it wasn't because they ran out of time, and it wasn't because they couldn't remember a formula. So I wanted to remove both of those barriers, and that's kind of tricky. So what I did in 334, so again, these are easy to do on in 230 online. You just say, these are the resources you're allowed, and here's the time you're allowed, which is longer than the time you think you're going to need. Go ahead. In person, it's a little bit different. So what I did was I allowed each student to bring in up to 2 pages of reference material that had to be handwritten by them. Actually, although one of the students has an accommodation that they need to use a computer to write their test on, I said, okay, you can have typed notes if you need it. That's fine. And that worked really well. So students could bring in whatever they wanted, so they weren't worried about memorizing stuff, and they could focus on the learning outcomes I cared about, which was how to apply those models. And the extra time thing, that was just luck. I found a time where my students were all available for a period of 2.5 hours. And then I said, okay, this is an 1.5 hour long test, but if you need up to an hour extra time, you can have it. So I booked the room for 2.5 hours for my 1.5 hour test, told them all this, and then some people used some or all of that extra time. But I am very sure that when everyone left the room, they weren't like, oh no, if only I had more time. There's no way. If they didn't know something by the end of that, they didn't know it. So I tried to keep, again, those lower barriers in the resources and the time, but it was still proctored, they were still in the room. So again, it's a little still not the perfect UDL thing, but I tried to, again, lower some of those barriers. And then finally, we had a big case study project in Stat 334, and I let students have a choice of the topic and the group members that they were going to work on. And the goal of the project was to take something that matters to them and model it with a Markov chain. So people did all sorts of really, really cool things. Someone did like the gambling game in Stardew Valley. Some people did baseball. Some people did blackjack. Lots of people did the weather. Some people did music, genetics, like all sorts of really cool things. And I also gave them 2 options for the presentation. So they could do an in-person presentation, which is what I would have always done before, or they could do a pre-recorded video. And a few groups chose in person, and most people chose a pre-recorded video. So that gets rid of, if a student has some anxiety in terms of presenting in front of their peers, this allows them to still demonstrate their knowledge and engage with it and express their knowledge in an inclusive way. They also did peer evaluations both within their group and between other groups, so they watched each other's videos and a reflection as well. So this is my first time offering a choice of method. When I taught it before, it was always in person. When I taught it online, obviously it had to be a recorded video, but offering the choice was pretty neat. And I tried to stick to the principle of not offering too many different choices, so it's only 2 choices, this or this, and that worked pretty well. Okay, so that's all of my ideas. In terms of some outcomes, some neat things happened with 334. I had a couple of students who had accommodation requests in terms of allowing them to use reference material or having extra time on tests and having a class note taker. All of those were automatically accommodated. It didn't have to do anything special. And so those students were able to engage with the course exactly as it was designed because of those inclusive choices that I made. So that felt really good. Like, that wasn't my goal to not need accommodations, but it was a cool side effect of it. As well, in the online version of Stat 230, the students mentioned that they really loved the live stream. That was the most frequent comment in the student evaluation, so that felt really good. And the students really felt engaged and supported in their learning. And that's the biggest important thing for me, that the students feel like I actually want them to succeed and that they're actually engaging with the material. Okay, I think that is it. Am I out of time?
Pretty much.
Okay. So I have one more slide, but I'm going to skip it for now. We'll go back to it in a second. So that's me. If you need to get in contact with me, please do. And thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions for them? I'll go to Tom.
Yeah. You mentioned you gave students time flexibility, like more time. Did you have to prepare students in any way to, like, for that? Because what we found, like at my institution, was that if we gave students like a 24-hour exam, like during the pandemic, and like we told them they should take 2 hours, but we'll give you 24 hours. Then students would take 18, 19, 24 hours to actually do that exam.
Yeah, I found that too. So in the taught at 334 online, I did exactly that. Like, so they had their, their tests, and they all had 24 hours to do them. And I said this should take you 1.5, or this should take you 1.5, or whatever. And people definitely spent more than that. So when we were back in person, at that point, like most people had probably taken an in-person exam before, so they were back in the groove of that. And I just said again, like this, and all the practice exams that I gave them were for the right length of like 1.5 hours. And so I said, like, to gauge your own preparedness, try these exams in exam-like conditions, see if you can finish them in 1.5 hours, and you'll have more than that. What did shock me a little bit was that literally nobody left at the 1.5 hour mark. And in previous years, I would have had people finish in 1.5 hours and get perfect. Not many, but like 1 or 2. And so I was like a little bit worried, but then I thought, if I were a strong student and I, got to the end of the exam, I wouldn't want to leave any money on the table. Like, I would want to go back and check every single answer and make sure that I'm getting, as good as I possibly can. So, I was expecting some people to leave, but nobody did. And then after a certain point, it's a weird little like game theory thing. Like, nobody wants to be the first person to stand up. And so, like, maybe next time I'm going to plant a TA. At a particular time. Anyway, so it was a little bit weird as an experiment, and I think it maybe lowered the stress a little bit. A few of my students have said, when I said it's been 1.5 hours, you could leave if you want, and nobody got up and left, everyone else breathed a sigh of relief because they're like, okay, I'm not done either, and that's okay. But in terms of the length, like, it really was 1.5 hour exam. It's exactly the same length of difficulty that I would have expected people to be able to do in that time. And then that extra time just gave people, again, flexibility to go slowly, to check their work more carefully, to not rush and make silly, careless errors. And the average was about the same, weirdly, as it was almost exactly. So it didn't artificially inflate the marks, basically. Thank you for the question.
Antoine, I think.
Sure. Yeah. In the Flip model, how much do you think students were spending on, say, working in class versus working outside class? Do you think it still fits in this, like, I don't know, like expected 8 to 10 hour?
That's a really good question. So the videos that they had to watch outside of class, which would replace normally the like 2 80-minute lectures, were 2 15 to 20-minute videos. And then I would expect them to maybe do a little bit of work in terms of answering those knowledge check questions and stuff. And then in class was, again, just like an 80-minute tutorial. So I have given them like a survey outside of the official course perception survey, just to see how they felt about the various course components, and I will report back how they have, how much work they felt like they were having to put into the course. When I taught 334 online, students were like, so this is a long time ago, so I have the results of the student evaluations. They, the average time they said they spent on the course was 7.1 hours per week, which is well within the realm of possibility. It is really, it's dangerous with a flipped course that you accidentally give them a course and a half worth of work if you're not careful. So I was happy to see that they didn't look like they were spending way more time on my course than any other. Thank you for asking.
I have time for one more question.
Or I have one more comment. I can go back to my previous slide. So inspired by, I think it was Emily's cool chart with dots. I made a chart with dots, except instead of dots, I used letters. So this is just sorry, this is again terrible slide design, all of the different choices that I talked about, how much impact it had on the students, and how much work it was for me. In the large course versus the small course, obviously some of these might be a little bit different, and some of these have large stars on them, like the accessible videos. If you're going to make them yourself, making accessible videos is a large amount of work. That is a large thing to do. And additional notes and examples, if you don't already have them, those would be large, but I did already have them, so that I put that as small. So there's lots of caveats here in terms of the resources that you already have access to. And a flexible time on tests, I put sort of medium for the medium course and small for the large course because it was online. It's really easy to make that flexible, but if that were in person, that would be a large amount of work to accommodate flexible time for 500 students. That might be hard to schedule. So some of these, again, these are just my vague impressions from my memory of teaching these classes, and I'll share these slides through whatever method we're going to use to get these out to people. If you want to ask any questions ever, please do. And I guess that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.